Her waist is so soft, Zephyr thought, his mind still fogged with sleep. Then he saw who it was. Panic seized him. Would he be murdered for sleeping with his mom's best friend's son? Frantically, he typed the question into his phone's search bar. He was so screwed. Sweat slicked his palms, his fingers trembling as he retyped the question into Google. This was a disaster. It had all started a few hours ago. He'd woken up in the dead of night and reached for his bedside lamp. The remnants of one too many cocktails the previous evening throbbed behind his eyes. His hand groped blindly in the darkness. Suddenly another hand, warm and firm, grasped his and guided it to the switch. Zephyr froze, a primal fear gripping him. He was 30, lived alone, and this was not normal. Oh my God! A ghost, he shrieked, scrambling back against the headboard. Then, the figure materialized in the dim light. Not a ghost, but a breathtakingly gorgeous young man. Sharp brows, a sculpted nose, a tantalizing glimpse of collarbone. Above toned abs, clad only in low-slung board shorts that hinted at a sculpted physique. The air crackled with pheromones, more potent than any aphrodisiac. The aphrodisiac, no. The young man sat cross-legged on the edge of the bed, wide innocent eyes fixed on Zephyr. Zephyr, it's me. Still reeling from the alcohol and the fright, Zephyr blurted, Who are you? Are you real? The young man's eyes widened further, a touch of amusement flickering in their depths. Zephyr, 5 hours ago, you were pretty sure I was real. He tilted his head, revealing a love bite on his neck. Then, with Zephyr gaping, turned slightly to display a series of scratches on his back. Zephyr's blood ran cold. He was doomed. As the fog in his brain cleared, recognition slammed into him. This wasn't just any young man. This was Orion Lyric, the only son of his best friend and boss, Calypso. And the reason he'd ended up in bed with Orion? His ex-boyfriend, the absolute jerk. A week ago, Zephyr, CEO of Lyric Industries, sat through a quarterly review meeting. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages from Calypso. 30 messages. The gist? Her son's father, Zephyr's boyfriend, Phoenix, was cheating on him with heiress Lyra Alara. Calypso had attached photographic evidence, Phoenix kissing Lyra's forehead. Calypso, fearing Zephyr's memory was failing, added helpful captions. Lyra Alara, Alara Group. The same Lyra Alara who was practically drooling over Phoenix at the last gala. Finally, a slightly hesitant message. Zephyr, you there? Did you break up? Break up? He'd gotten a good morning text from Phoenix just that morning. Furious, Zephyr called Calypso. Where did you see them? Outside Alara Group. Phoenix was dropping Lyra off at work. His car is parked right out front. Calypso had been at Alara Group for a business meeting. Zephyr forwarded the pictures to Phoenix with a terse explain. Phoenix didn't reply. Zephyr, swamped with work, couldn't confront him until the evening. They met at a restaurant downstairs from Lyric Industries. Zephyr expected an apology and explanation. Instead, Phoenix delivered a line that almost made Zephyr throw his plate at him. Zephyr, I love you. Lyra and I are just mutually beneficial. Our families are working together. They want us to marry. We agreed. A marriage of convenience. No interference, no intimacy. You want me to be your mistress? Zephyr asked, incredulous. His world tilted. It's not like that, Phoenix continued, oblivious. We'll be the same as always, just discreet in public. Discreet? Zephyr threw a glass of water in his face. Get out. I will never be anyone's mistress. He stormed out, leaving Phoenix sputtering. At the entrance, he saw Lyra Alara. She gave him a smug smile. It was a setup. The next day, pictures of Zephyr drenching Phoenix plastered the tabloids. Lyric Industries CEO Zephyr Finch and Phoenix re-split. Their relationship had been headline news for years ago when Phoenix, notorious playboy, had settled down with Zephyr, a relatively unknown executive. The media had given them 3 months tops. They'd been wrong. Until now. Zephyr, fearing the PR fallout, retaliated. He released Phoenix's arrangement proposal to the press and publicly warned Lyra to keep a close eye on her fiancé. The media had a field day. Never trust a reformed rake. CEO Zephyr Finch learns the hard way. Articles dissected their 4-year relationship. Zephyr was exhausted. He couldn't deny he still cared for Phoenix. They'd met when Zephyr was just starting out at Lyric Industries, long before he became CEO. Phoenix, already handling projects for his family's company, had been assigned to their joint venture. He'd been patient, mentoring Zephyr, tolerating his inexperience. He'd even said, "Seeing you work so hard, it made me want to take care of you forever." But knowing Zephyr's insecurities, his mother had been a mistress. Phoenix had used that knowledge to inflict maximum pain, leaving no room for reconciliation. As is often the case, the person suffering most from a breakup isn't the heartbroken individual, but their best friend, forced to endure the drunken rants. Calypso dragged Zephyr to a bar. Zephyr raged, fueled by alcohol. For years. Wasted. Anyone who tells me a leopard can change its spots gets a slap. Then, his phone rang. It was Orion. Calypso's son, fresh out of college, had been thrust into the role of business tycoon by his mother. He'd called Zephyr his only acquaintance in the city, asking for company while he reminisced about his high school haunts. Zephyr, still reeling from the breakup, had snapped at him. Calypso, mistaking the caller for Phoenix, grabbed the phone and unleashed a stream of colorful expletives. Only when she paused for breath did a small voice say, "Calypso, it's Orion. Is Zephyr okay? I can pick him up." Calypso froze. She knew Orion. She gave him the address, then called her husband, mortified. Orion and her husband arrived simultaneously. They exchanged knowing glances, deposited the inebriated Zephyr with Orion, and vanished. Orion took Zephyr home. The alcohol and the heartache finally overwhelmed him. He sat on the sofa, sobbing. Orion knelt beside him, cupping his face. "Zephyr, don't cry." Zephyr sniffled. This, business tycoon, wasn't so bad after all. "I'm not crying. Go home." Orion dabbed at his tears with a tissue. Then, he kissed him. Zephyr, convinced it was a hallucination, bolted the next morning while Orion was in the bathroom. He showed up at Calypso's apartment, phone off, seeking sanctuary. "Zephyr, you can't hide forever. You have to go to work on Monday," Calypso sighed. "Just let me process this," Zephyr pleaded. He'd slept with his boss's son. If Calypso found out, his career was over, along with any chance of finding love. By evening, anxiety about Orion gnawed at him. Years of looking after him had ingrained a habit of concern. He turned his phone on. Calypso called immediately. "Zephyr, where are you? Did you get lost on a bender?" Calypso. "Don't, Calypso, me. Why are both your and Orion's phones off?" "What?" "Orion messaged me to mail him our family register. He's only been in the city a month. What does he need that for?" Zephyr's stomach dropped. "Is he getting married? What hussy has bewitched my son? I'll fly back there and skin her alive." Zephyr called Orion. Still off. He went home, a knot of dread tightening in his chest. Orion was on his sofa, playing Candy Crush. "Why is your phone off?" "Your mother called me, frantic." "Dead battery. Your charger doesn't fit." Zephyr's head throbbed. How did he even begin this conversation? Why hadn't Orion gone home? Why did he need the family register? Who was this mystery fiancé? Should he just pretend last night never happened? He settled for, "Have you eaten?" Orion looked up, his eyes soft. "No." "What do you want?" "You." Zephyr's heart leaped into his throat. "To cook me something." "Anything." Zephyr retreated to the kitchen, relieved and terrified. The refrigerator contained chicken wings, eggs, and soda. "Cola chicken wings and fried eggs, okay?" Orion followed him into the kitchen. "Perfect." Zephyr avoided his gaze. Orion's shadow fell over him, a tangible presence. This wasn't the rebellious teenager he could drag out of internet cafes and scold. This was a man, taller, stronger. He swallowed, unsure how to broach the subject. "So," he began, then stopped. "After a day of thinking, have you made up your mind?" Orion asked, his eyes searching Zephyr's. Zephyr had fled that morning because Orion had announced his intention to marry him. To take responsibility. "Last night, we were both drunk," Zephyr stammered during dinner. "Let's just forget it happened." Orion chewed thoughtfully on a chicken wing. "You were drunk." "I wasn't. I didn't have a drop. I was completely sober." Zephyr's carefully constructed argument crumbled. "You're single. You want to get married," Orion continued calmly. "I'm single. 22. Legally old enough. I want to get married too." Zephyr groaned inwardly. He remembered crying to Orion about Phoenix, about how he'd planned to marry him. "You watched me grow up. You know me better than anyone. We're perfect for each other." Perfect? He was 7.5 years older. He'd practically raised Orion. He'd called Calypso Sis and forced Orion to call him Uncle Zephyr. This was insane. Don't make this harder than it is, Zephyr pleaded. If I lose my job now, I'll be middle-aged and destitute. Orion didn't push, but he didn't back down either. He began a relentless pursuit. He showed up at Zephyr's apartment every morning, drove him to work, picked him up, no matter how late. Zephyr felt a pang of guilt every time he saw him. He tried to refuse the rides. Orion pulled out his phone. If you don't let me do this, I'll tell my mother about us. 3 years of parenting down the drain. Then, the final blow. 10 days after their breakup, Phoenix and Lyra announced their engagement. The media went wild, splashing photos of the happy couple everywhere. One reporter even asked Phoenix if he'd invite Zephyr to the engagement party. And then, adding insult to injury, Zephyr received an invitation. They were actually going through with it. They were actually rubbing his face in it. Breaking up messy is just tacky, Zephyr always thought. Better to lick your wounds in private and let time heal. Even after Phoenix shattered his heart, Zephyr maintained a stoic facade, going to work, eating his meals, and crying only in the solitude of empty rooms. He wouldn't stoop to disrupting their lives, but that didn't mean he was a pushover. Calypso, however, rolled her eyes at his declaration. Zephyr, everyone expects you to show up at the engagement party like a jilted lover, sobbing hysterically. Zephyr winced. There was precedent. Phoenix's ex had done exactly that when they'd first started dating. Find a date, Calypso advised. Show them you've moved on. Don't become a laughingstock. Easier said than done. For years with Phoenix had withered his social life. Calypso winked. Orion. Young, handsome, rich. Zephyr shuddered. Was she insane? He was avoiding Orion, terrified Calypso would discover their entanglement. But driving home, Orion's face swam into his mind. He recalled Orion's recent attentiveness. He'd always treated Orion like a kid, a habit from years past. Now, Orion was taking care of him. Breakfast at his desk every morning. Waiting for him after work, no matter how late. An umbrella on rainy days. Ginger tea when his period cramps had him doubled over, muttering, "Why aren't you pregnant yet? Then we could elope. I even have the family register. If you don't love me now, we can always try. Marry first, love later." Zephyr had pretended not to hear. But the gestures, however unconventional, were undeniably touching. That evening, Orion was waiting in his living room. Clearly, he'd seen the gossip columns. Need a +1 for the engagement party? He asked, eyes hopeful. Zephyr's guilt flared. He opened his mouth to protest, but Orion held up his phone, Calypso's number displayed prominently. The message was clear, take me, or I tell mom everything. So much for heartfelt gestures. Zephyr snapped, unleashing a torrent of frustration on Orion. The kid wouldn't back down, refusing to leave. Later, Zephyr woke up and went to the kitchen for water. Orion was asleep on the sofa, curled up awkwardly in the dim light of the living room. He startled awake at Zephyr's approach. Zephyr. In the quiet of the night, his concern was palpable. Was he worried Zephyr was secretly crying over Phoenix? A warmth spread through Zephyr's chest. Why didn't you sleep in the guest room? He asked softly. Fell asleep playing games, Orion mumbled, rubbing his eyes. Lies. Orion didn't play those kinds of games. Go to bed. I'm fine. Zephyr sent him to the guest room, then lay awake, thinking. He threw himself into work, trying to block out the confusion. One evening, he worked late. Orion wasn't there. He felt a strange pang of disappointment. Where's Orion? He asked his assistant. He had a meeting with Phoenix Reese about an hour ago. Something about a collaboration. Reese? The families had ongoing business dealings. Business was business, even if love was lost. Curiosity, mixed with a flicker of worry for Orion, prompted Zephyr to ask for the meeting location. He was halfway there when a text from Phoenix arrived. An audio file. Zephyr clicked play. It was Orion's voice. You're letting an amazing woman like Zephyr go. You'll never find anyone better. Please, don't break up with him. The first part was assertive, almost defiant. The second, tinged with desperation. Zephyr urged his driver to hurry. He arrived just as Phoenix was leaving. Orion stood alone, looking lost, the autumn wind ruffling his hair. Idiot, Zephyr murmured, his throat tight. Phoenix had made a calculated decision, choosing Alara and her family's influence over Zephyr. And Orion, This foolish, loyal boy had pleaded his case. Something shifted within Zephyr. He felt a blossoming, a fragile hope. "Should we stop, Mr. Finch?" the driver asked. Orion was already getting into his car. "Go home," Zephyr said. He didn't mention the recording to Orion, but he couldn't shake the image of his dejected face. The engagement party arrived. Zephyr took Orion. He couldn't think of anyone else he'd rather bring. He told himself it was a networking opportunity for the aspiring tycoon. All those important people. Good for connections, he'd explained to Calypso, who'd just left. At the party, Zephyr focused on introductions, treating the event like a business mixer. But Phoenix and Lyra weren't going to let him off that easily. Lyra, clinging to Phoenix's arm, approached with a saccharine smile. "I didn't think you'd come, Zephyr." "Business obligations," Zephyr replied coolly. Lyric Industries still worked with both families. He glanced at Phoenix, who looked surprised, almost annoyed. So, Lyra hadn't consulted him about the invitation. She was deliberately trying to provoke him, to get a rise out of him. As Zephyr raised his glass, Orion suddenly snatched it away. "Don't drink," he murmured, his arm sliding around Zephyr's waist. "Not yet sure." Zephyr frowned, bewildered. "Sure about what?" Phoenix, however, seemed to understand. His brow furrowed. Orion smiled at them. "Excuse us. We're trying for a baby. No alcohol." Zephyr wanted to crawl under a table. The room was swarming with reporters. This was career suicide. But Lyra's smugness seemed to deflate. Orion, having landed one blow, delivered another. "Lyra," he said smoothly, "it must feel good to finally snag a boyfriend after so many attempts." "Congratulations." Zephyr cringed. Satisfying, yes, but also potentially disastrous for their business relationships. Before Zephyr could intervene, Phoenix lashed out. "Zephyr, settling already? A kid like this? Do you even know him? Young men get bored easily. Don't come crying to me when he dumps you." Something inside Zephyr snapped. He was ready to brawl. But Orion was faster. He punched Phoenix. "I've known Zephyr for 7 years. I know he hates spring because it always rains in Ningqing, and he hates carrying umbrellas. I know he likes the street food by his old university because the vendor reminds him of his mother. I know he gets debilitating cramps every month. I know he loves cilantro and hates onions and garlic." Zephyr stared, stunned. How did Orion know all this? Orion punched Phoenix again. "And I know Zephyr hates it when people exploit his vulnerabilities. So, do you think we know each other?" Zephyr grabbed Orion's arm as he prepared to strike again. 2 slaps, he could probably get away with. This, however, was assault. Ignoring the buzzing reporters, Zephyr pulled Orion behind him. "Congratulations to you both," he said to Phoenix, his voice tight. "Send me the bill for your medical expenses and emotional distress. I'll consider it a wedding gift, so no need for another invitation." He dragged Orion away, ignoring Lyra's protests. Back at his apartment, Orion sat looking contrite. Zephyr wanted to yell, to scold him, but the words caught in his throat. Finally, they both spoke at once. "I'm sorry. Just go home." Orion stopped apologizing. "Zephyr, I'm serious about this. About you. We do know each other. I know everything about you." "How?" Zephyr asked, mesmerized. Orion's eyes softened. "I annoyed you for 3 years, and I loved you for 3 years. No, 7. You knew. I told you." Zephyr stammered. That was a childish joke. Orion had confessed on the day he graduated high school. Zephyr and Calypso had been too busy to take him on a graduation trip, so he'd gone to Tibet with friends. Zephyr picked him up at the airport. Orion, sweaty and grinning, had hugged him. "Zephyr," he'd whispered, "I love you." Zephyr, taking it as a greeting, replied, "Love you too." Orion pulled back, his expression serious. "I'm not kidding. I mean it. My friends brought their girlfriends on the trip. I kept wishing you were there." Zephyr had stared blankly for a moment, then said, "Orion, don't be silly. Let's go home." Orion pressed for a reason. "You're 18, I'm 26. I'm being pressured to get married, and you're barely out of high school. Why is that a problem? Could you marry me right now?" Zephyr had challenged. Orion had fallen silent. They hadn't spoken of it since. Zephyr had dismissed it as a teenage crush. "Now, if you said you wanted to get married, I could marry you today," Orion said softly. "I told myself if you were married by the time I was old enough, I'd move on. But you're single again, I can't let you go. Zephyr looked at Orion, at the earnestness in his eyes. His heart pounded. For years ago, the confession had been a joke. Now, it resonated with a force that shook him to his core. The fight at the engagement party was hushed up. No scandals for prominent families. But it severed the last threads of Zephyr's feelings for Phoenix. He still hadn't agreed to Orion's pursuit. It felt too strange. He considered quitting his job, running away. Then, another barrage of messages from Calypso. Not about Phoenix this time, but Orion. Your son is drowning his sorrows. Come get him before someone else does. And a location. A bar. Was Calypso playing matchmaker? Orion was already drunk, surrounded by old high school friends who looked apprehensive at Zephyr's arrival. Zephyr couldn't carry Orion, so they helped him to the car. Why so much drinking tonight? Zephyr asked. They exchanged uneasy glances. Finally, one spoke up. He's upset. About you and Phoenix. Zephyr braced himself. After you broke up, Orion begged Phoenix to reconsider. He even investigated Lyra, hoping Phoenix would see the light and come back to you. What he said at the engagement party, he meant it. He really loves you. Zephyr drove Orion home, his heart aching. He remembered scolding Orion for his recklessness at the party, for jeopardizing their business relationships. Orion had just gone quiet. Now, looking at Orion's sleeping face, Zephyr whispered, maybe we should try this. Orion's eyes snapped open. You said it. No take-backs. He'd been faking. Zephyr stared into Orion's intense gaze, remembering him curled up on his sofa, worried about him. Remembering him pleading with Phoenix. The boy he'd looked after was gone. No take-backs, Zephyr repeated, a smile tugging at his lips. 7 years be damned. He was still young enough for a grand love story. Zephyr, I love you, Orion cried, then, overcome by alcohol and emotion, tumbled forward, knocking Zephyr onto the floor. 3 months after they became a couple, Zephyr received a call from Calypso. One sentence, come to Cloud City next Wednesday with Orion. He'd felt invincible declaring his love, confident in his youth, convinced love conquered all. Now, faced with Calypso, he was a quivering mess. He texted Calypso's counterpart, Rhea. Rhea, if I dated your son and wanted to marry him, would you break my legs? Rhea replied with a string of question marks, followed by, I'd sue you. My son is 3. You monster. Zephyr groaned. Orion, amused by his panic, chuckled. Calypso won't give us a hard time. You've known her for years. You know her. That was precisely why he was terrified. Calypso was a force of nature. Seeing his unease, Orion finally adopted a CEO-like demeanor. Don't worry, Zephyr. I've got this. Wednesday arrived with agonizing slowness. Just before boarding the plane, Orion suggested, let's get the marriage license first. Present her with a fait accompli. Zephyr gave him a look. That would guarantee Calypso's wrath. On the plane, Orion held his hand. I'm serious about the marriage license. I'm afraid you'll run. Looking at Orion's profile, Zephyr sighed. He was completely smitten. I'm not running, he squeezed Orion's hand. You loved me for 7 years. I may not have loved you back then, but I do now. And I'm not afraid. At Calypso's Cloud City villa, she greeted them in a business suit, all serious professionalism. Zephyr, come to my study. Her voice was cool, her face expressionless. Zephyr wilted. Orion stepped forward, shielding him. Mom, it was my idea. I'm the one who confessed. I'm the one who pursued him. Quiet. Orion insisted on following them to the study. Calypso raised an eyebrow at Zephyr, a silent challenge. Zephyr turned to Orion. Wait here. Don't cause trouble. Be good. Inside the study, Calypso sat behind her desk, Zephyr on the sofa. Zephyr, have you thought this through? He hasn't even seen the world yet. How can he settle down? Are you regressing? How long will a youthful infatuation last? You're 30. How many years can you afford to waste? 3? 5? 35 is considered high risk for pregnancy. What if you break up? You'll have lost your chance at having children. Are you going to gamble your future on sweet nothings? Calypso was ruthless, dissecting his fears with surgical precision. Zephyr wanted to surrender. Finally, he met her gaze. I've thought about all of it, and I still love him. You know I don't back down from my decisions. Calypso paused, perhaps remembering Zephyr's unwavering loyalty during the early years of Lyric Industries. He'd turned down lucrative offers, staying with her fledgling company when others had doubted its success. He'd told her once, half joking, that she'd given him a dream, a reason to keep his passion alive. Are you trying to guilt me with past favors? No. I'm telling you, I love Orion. And I don't give up on what I believe in or who I believe in. Calypso studied him for a long moment. Then, she pulled out a document. Sign this. Take some time off. Had he just been handed a check to disappear from Orion's life? This is a bit cliché, don't you think? Zephyr quipped weakly. Cut the Calypso crap and call me Mom, she snapped, then softened. What do you think you're signing? This isn't a firing. This is a gift. It was a stock transfer agreement, granting him a significant share of Lyric Industries' Ningchung branch. Zephyr stared, speechless. It was meant to be a wedding gift, Calypso explained. Now, it's just keeping it in the family. Take some time off, plan the wedding, go on a honeymoon. Zephyr still looked bewildered. Don't tell me you haven't even gotten the marriage license yet? I sent Orion the family register months ago. Zephyr shook his head dumbly. Useless. Calypso admitted she needed to see that Zephyr was as committed as Orion, that her son wasn't the only one willing to fight for their relationship. Orion had told her everything when he'd asked for the family register. I should have known, Calypso mused. In high school, whenever I had to deal with his antics, he'd look disappointed. He'd ask why I was there, and I didn't think anything of it. Now, I realize he was asking why it wasn't you. His first summer home from college, he found out you were dating someone and got drunk. The housekeeper told me, but I didn't ask why. I figured it was a teenage heartbreak. After graduation, he moped around for 2 months, then asked to work in the Ningching office. I thought it was a good idea. He always listened to you. He told me he was never letting you go. Fine. You raised him. He's yours. Outside the study, Orion was pacing nervously. Calypso rolled her eyes. Go get married, you idiot. Took you long enough. Don't come crying to me if he runs off now. Orion's tense shoulders relaxed. Okay. He beamed. A week before their wedding, during the May Day holiday, Orion's high school friends were back in Ningchung. They planned a bachelor party. Don't come, Zephyr had told him, laughing. It's a bachelor party. Zephyr had plans with Rhea at the spa. Rhea, seeing his radiant happiness, had a sudden epiphany. You know, this gives me ideas. My son's starting school soon. Time to find him a wife. Someone to handle the teenage rebellion, the homework meltdowns. All the things that will give me a heart attack. Zephyr shuddered. After the spa, he picked Orion up from the bar. Orion had been drinking. Inside, Zephyr frowned. Orion's early love, a girl he vividly remembered lecturing about the dangers of teenage romance, was there. She'd been defiant, clinging to Orion's hand, declaring they would support each other's academic goals. They'd broken up within a month. Now, she was sitting across from Orion, raising her glass with a bright smile. Orion smiled back. A pang of jealousy shot through Zephyr. The phrase "old flame" echoed in his mind. The girl's reaction when she saw him, a quick, involuntary flinch, fueled his suspicion. He didn't say anything, just smiled, said goodnight, and drove Orion home. On the drive, Calypso's words came back to him. He hasn't seen the world. How long will a youthful infatuation last? He suddenly wasn't so sure. Back at the apartment, Orion, still buzzing from the party, chattered excitedly. Zephyr, convinced he was elated to see his old flame, grew increasingly quiet. Orion finally noticed. Zephyr, are you okay? Zephyr hesitated. Maybe we should postpone the wedding. You should see the world first. Orion's face paled. Why? Zephyr couldn't hide his feelings. He told him about the girl. Orion relaxed, letting out a long breath. Zephyr, she wasn't my girlfriend. What? Orion looked sheepish. I hired her. To make you jealous. Zephyr gaped. What kind of ridiculous scheme is that? Epilogue. It was a ridiculous scheme, born of 15-year-old desperation. Orion's parents had divorced. His father had deemed his mother a useless housewife. She'd taken Orion and her settlement to Ningchung, determined to build an empire. She'd been too busy to parent, leaving Orion in the care of her assistant, Zephyr. Zephyr, fresh out of college, hadn't yet been softened by corporate life. He had a temper. Orion, reeling from his parents' divorce, was rebellious. It was a volatile mix. They'd clashed from the start. Orion, resentful of his mother's neglect, had been sullen when Zephyr took him to enroll in his new school. Zephyr had seen right through him. Kid, I'm not thrilled about this either. Shape up, or I'll leave you here to fend for yourself. Orion's first impression, this lady is kind of tough. He'd soon learn just how tough. His truancy and gaming addiction eventually reached his mother, who dispatched Zephyr to deal with it. The first few times, it had been verbal warnings. Then, Orion skipped school and stayed out all night. Zephyr hunted him down, finally finding him in a dingy internet cafe. He yanked the plug, dragged Orion outside, and kicked him in the rear. Orion, if you want to drown in self-pity, no one can stop you. But is your parents' divorce worth throwing your life away? You have to stand on your own 2 feet. Orion, furious at his mother for forgetting his birthday and being out of town, had yelled back. Zephyr, realizing the date, felt a pang of guilt about the kick. They say a spanking on your birthday brings good luck, he'd said lamely. Consider that kick an early present. Orion just glared. That night, Zephyr took him home and bought him a birthday cake. From then on, he made sure Orion wasn't alone on holidays or when Calypso was away. Orion pretended to grumble, but he always went. He'd realized he was in love with Zephyr that summer after his freshman year. They'd become close. Zephyr took him everywhere, introducing him as her nephew. Orion protested, but Zephyr ignored him. One day, exasperated, he'd pushed Zephyr against a wall, looming over her. I'm taller than you, even in heels. I'm not your nephew. He'd looked down at Zephyr. Suddenly aware of their proximity, of her breath on his face. His heart raced. He realized he didn't just enjoy spending time with Zephyr, he was in love with her. He pulled away, confused. This was crazy. She was 7 years older. It had to be a mistake. He avoided her for 3 months. But her image, laughing, angry, scolding, haunted his thoughts. He had to face it. He was in love with her. But Zephyr treated him like a younger brother, sometimes even a son. Even after the wall incident, she'd just laughed and patted his cheek. Okay, little brother. He'd hired the girl, hoping for a flicker of jealousy. Instead, Zephyr gave them both a lecture on the pitfalls of teenage romance. The girl, traumatized, swore never to participate in his schemes again. Zephyr, after he dropped the girl off, told him, wait until college, Orion. I promise I won't say a word then. But she had, rejecting his confession. He couldn't keep up. He wasn't allowed to date when she was. When he finally could, she was already thinking about marriage. By the time he was legally old enough, she was with someone else, planning a wedding. He'd tried to move on, but he couldn't. Other girls confessed their feelings, attracted by his looks and family wealth. But all he could see was Zephyr. He decided he'd give up once she was married. Then, she'd broken up with Phoenix. Hope, unexpected and dazzling, bloomed anew. Zephyr, listening to his story, asked, why did you beg Phoenix to stay with me? Orion looked down. You didn't want to be with me. I love you, but I wanted you to be happy, even if it wasn't with me. Zephyr blinked back tears. He was completely, irrevocably gone. He kissed Orion. I'm with you now. Orion, stunned for a moment, scooped him up and carried him to the bedroom. Orion, you've been drinking. You can't. The end.